Hello, everyone. I'm Barbara Sabol, Accents author, and I'll be reading my book, my chapbook, Original Ruse, published by Accents Publishing, part of the Winged series, the first chapbooks that Katerina Stoikova did, and they're all handmade. They're beautiful. So it's my pleasure to read Original Ruse for you. And it was published in 2011. The first poem is the title poem, Original Ruse, and it's a different spin on the Fall from Grace. Original Ruse. 1. No apple was worth the risk, not even an Asian pear apple, the snappish bite and comely shape like a sister. Besides, she had no map to locate Japan, no dictionary to look up exotic. Even a gala, succulent as a cool-tongued French kiss, was better left to glow pinkly on that one cordoned-off tree. There was that problem of a map and no produce catalog. Bored by his puny repertoire of stories, small store of words to describe the world, always jabbering, birds, look, monkeys, funny, again, perfect, perfect. She wandered out past the orchard to the garden's reaches, only seeking quiet, space to consider the real meaning of perfection. Convenient, the lack of a dictionary. But he was always after her, a constant annoyance, you can imagine. She longed to drink her coffee in peace. An occasional morning, it didn't seem like a selfish entreaty. 2. Past the rows of self-tilling beans, yellow melons fattening in the heat, the flowers she knew from their odor, naming them herself, orchid, narcissus, skunk cabbage. She discovered something new. She knew the genus instinctively, nightshade, lovely word. She also fathomed that plants in this family could be toxic, but that fragrance, perfumed, dirt, musky, green, summer downpour, heat, lightning, pungent, irresistible. And it fell so easily from the vine. 3. He had followed her there, found her warming this blood-red globe in her palm. He watched as she pressed her nose to the stem, breathed it in with a kind of rapture he'd never witnessed. So, after a small bite, just a nick in the soft skin, after coddling it against her palate, then grabbing the nearest limb for balance, she had no choice but to hand it over. Excuse me. And the next poem, Vermis Equinox, is a little ode to the earthworm. And it's written in syllabics. It's not air or escape from saturated digs, so much as the impulse toward creation that lures the earthworm back above ground, the flaccid grass slick as a just-born under the last few shards of snow, worth risking the robin's beak, the groundhog's grubby clutch, is the ride along the length of its see-through segments, each link purpose-driven. 1 to burrow, 1 to digest, and 2 to ooze out a cocoon. Either way, for breath or love, blind to the difference, they shimmy up, powered by 5 minuscule hearts, each muscled ring a clause dependent on the next, God's first articulate terrestrial sentence. The next poem is one of 2 in here that have a line from a Sappho fragment. And this is called Poem with a First Line from a Fragment by Sappho. No more than the bird with piercing voice, this sweep of light across the grass. Evening quickens. The wood thrush calls down the last plumes of violet, bruising the air beneath the double warbled cry. Though much is understood about the bending of light passing through one medium, say dimming day, to another of less velocity, say a glass, water. How is it the light, along with the bird and its sorrow song, bows, if you will, along some vector, an angling of X toward a denser Y, so that what we perceive shifts as we look, slant as a fault in the earth. Nothing truer than my palm curving the shape of your thirst and its quenching, as I carry a glass of water, brimming out through the twilit yard to where you sit aslant the purpling sky. Everything, even the water and its amber tumbler, all its immaculate droplets intact, stills and is held by this tapering half-light, by the pitch of a half-recalled call, response, the glass, our hands, vanishing. The next poem, To the Grocery List, feels relevant to the current times, which is the wars in Eastern Europe. This is kind of a tribute to how we sustain ourselves in the wake of disasters, natural and man-made. To the grocery list. This incantation of greens and grains, rosy citrus in season, appeases with textures and odors rising from scrap paper. Add the alchemists, butter, flour, subtleties of rue, scant ballast against earth's slack-jawed hunger, splitting the over-leavened bread, and the sea spills from its immense bowl, salting the land. What can the hands do but knead and blend, the fingers themselves marvel, and the tongue in every living language weeps. A poem about electricity. Convection theories. Before the storm, anything but calm. Wind catches the private undersides of oak leaves, holds them up to the elements, and with that first crack of thunder, I am running to unplug appliances, large and small, checking ghost currents that might set us, you, me, the dogs, the end tables, alight. Last month, a storm like this sent a pin oak crashing right through my neighbor's roof into the front and back bedrooms. It was early evening, thank God, and they were downstairs just finishing dinner. Somehow, the whole family managed to walk out the front door, survey the wreckage of their wooden house, mangled as a sea-tossed ship, and like spared survivors of disaster, stand linked together on the sidewalk, repeating to their unscathed neighbors, how lucky we were, how blessed. So quick, that spear of light, the heart-splitting howl of opposites in motion. Then the release of a cooling downburst. Here, we flip the switches back on, breathe. If only our inevitable fights could work like this. The wild whip of words, our tendernesses exposed. Then the generous abandon of rain. Next poem is about electricity also, but of a different kind. This is called Triboluminescence at 12. And triboluminescence, a very scientific word for the contact between a positive and a negative ion, freeing atoms to create this electrical charge and other scientific kind of phenomena. But it also applies to what happens when you bite into a peppermint lifesaver in a dark closet. For anyone who's done this, this is Triboluminescence at 12. bowed alone into the intentional dark of my bedroom closet to forge a spark. I crouch among denim, walking shoes, animal odors of back and forth woes. Playground talks more than rude fiction, with all my extremities craving friction. While my tongue retraces the raised details on a hard white ring, innocent lingual braille. Window green, oh, the visceral anticipation as my teeth scout out the willing section and bite. Electrons rogue from the atom toward new unions, till now unfathomed. Molecules meet midair, an ultraviolet encounter, and I, for one potent moment, glow. A quick blue cloud marks the union of self and charged self, some chemistry proven. One milk molar gesture tokens the possible, a cool, ghostly host, mouthed into the miracle of body coursing blood, a newly minted wonder as this first flinted lightning gives way to thunder. And on to peaches. Give me the savor of those summer peaches, the ones Mom crossed 2 lanes for in rush hour, swerving into Hartman's produce stand, which appeared every June, transforming the gravel lot at Bailey Estate into a succulent mirage. Orbits so full, they filled my entire hand like a softball. Frankie and I scrabbled into the brown paper bag right there in the dusty lot. Our mouths so swamped with pleasure, it curled our toes in our sneakers. We couldn't even look at each other as we slurped and gulped the wet pulp. The best we could manage was a startled moan when she called us to get on back in the car. More gustatory delights here with the poem Bounty. We bought sacks of grapes and figs, ham sweating fat from the island store, too much perhaps for 2 people and a week, handing our exotic coins to the man with the blood-smeared apron and Brutus forearms. Full of the sun's brazen light, we outroared the waves, your white shirt flapping about your hips as up and back we strolled the beach by the rope-muscled boy tossing chum to greedy gulls, and felt fine shells crackling under our soles. He looked away as we passed him. At night, we'd soak in the tepid pool, cracked along its oval length like a grin. And after gorging on salty cheese, plump olives, thick stew rinsed with wine, after our skin swelled with each other, we'd polish limbs and backs with virgin oils and sleep, greased on sheets as thick as sails, our dreams crowded with the stumbling of hooves. Daydreamer. This is an ekphrastic poem after the painting called Daydreamer by Andrew Wyeth. And the epigraph is by Betsy Wyeth, his wife. So many people come into a picture posing for parts of bodies. Andy's always fiction. Daydreamer. Lifting arms overhead, I pull off my blouse and resume an upright pose, becoming instead his dreaming dancer, spinning, spun toward the bed. Under the hooks in the low-ceilinged farmhouse, by the window framing the river's cascade. This room's beguiled by the shape of sleep. My shadow curves around me, a warm beast, as he gauges angles of daylight and shade. He sketches me as morning light enters, dawned in other women's skins, others' faces. Though my sovereign veils and interior places suggest a country his brushes cannot alter. As I lie wakeful, daydreaming his pretender, unfurled like a flag, but not in surrender. And of course, that's the voice of Helga, his model. This next poem is kind of a tribute to my hometown, which is in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. For anyone who's ever waitressed, especially in a diner, this is for you. Over easy at the all-night diner. I dump out the old brew and sizzle up the grill around dawn. When the third shifters thin out and the day shift rolls in, then I spot him. Red stitching above his breast pocket reads, Tom. In wrinkled coveralls, he leans on the counter and orders eggs over hard. Yolk hard as the August sun, bubbled like fresh tar under his roller, leaves me his change and downs the dregs. Most folks take theirs over easy. They like for the yolk to ooze and sop it up with a slice of bread. Most still dreaming, eyes half open, maybe wishing the day was already over, but nobody says. Bet he knocks off same time as me. I follow him home in my head. A tidy one bedroom, painted light blue with pictures on the wall. Would sleep in till whenever, and then I'd bring his eggs to the bed, over easy this time, spread jelly on his toast. Then he turns me once, easy, over. I notice the color of his eyes. This is where it gets blurry. We have nothing to say or say nothing. Either way, things get tense. I'll keep an eye out for a guy with a sewn-on name to spoil my theory while I sizzle up the grill, scoop out fine ground Joe in no big hurry. I guess I will confess this next poem is based on a true event. First date, or ways to fix zucchini. I expected maybe a bouquet, blooms not weighted with prospect, sending something ingenious. I'm going to start that all over again. First date or ways to fix zucchini. I think I'm rattled by the memory of this. All right. I expected maybe a bouquet, blooms not weighted with prospect. Something ingenuous like asters or carnations would have charmed me utterly. But he handed me a zucchini, anatomically superlative. This is for you, one raised brow. Organic, grew it myself, gaze averted. Afterward, how could I notice anything else? The color of his eyes, those elegant fingers, smooth half-moon nail beds, the smile that practically breathed fall apples and Jameson out of his digitized photo. The taste that lingered, however, was of Gruyere, garden parsley, sweet onion from an excellent zucchini au gratin, which he tasted without relish, seconds, or dessert. It's another ekphrastic poem from a postcard. Postcard, Orleans Bay. The bay too chill this time of year for bathing. We sit and watch the skiffs drift, aimless as the clouds. This closing day of our idle journey under a wide blue umbrella, we linger in a cordial stupor. Long after a flock of terns flying south pulls the flat sash of evening across the water. Waiting in line with a loaf of Wonder Bread, I glance at Star. The Star is a tabloid. faded by a pleasant smile, teeth even as a new sidewalk, no cracks, broken back. Aging wrecked girl with a face perfect stranger's mistake for an old neighbor, the off-duty checkout girl. Mostly blonde at 52, no ominous checks on the medical history form, punctual as a 3.5-minute egg, yolk just right for dipping. Neat as a cliche, as the denouement of a dime novel. Dutiful, I play the pleasant friend, never the ample heroine glistening with wretchedness. Tucked behind plain luck, I brace for the squeeze of a rock, diamond or obsidian, in a uniquely ruinous place. The next poem, Winter, is also inspired by a fragment from Sappho, the first line being that fragment. Winter is a country that settles in your limbs, stirs the joints, mortar, pestle, and your own weather shivers against the changes as it takes up residence in the vintage bones. If not winter, it's your years that hush the blood, cooling the snow-pebbled skin as your own paler season seeps in by degrees with little fuss. If winter, then you take it all in. What choice do you have but to absorb the fading green-tinged light like absinthe, color of forgetting, first and last color of the world? Husbandry. Deer step out of the thinning woods nightly. Hunger makes them bold, almost tame. They head for his gentleman's garden in the side yard, experimental carrots and bib lettuce striking roots. He bound the brood with woven wire, protection from motley appetites invading our land, cursing with each barb prick. He finished the useless fence in one night, then coming back in, grimed the knob with muck and blood. At dusk, I watch as two does approach, their heads a soft angle to the tentative morsels. They accept the snag and pool of wire over muzzles, black gums drawing back as they work the bitter husks of winter tomatoes. I think the taste must be sweet to them, like living. Let them feed, what harm? But he runs at them and they scatter into thin suburban wilds. Morning's a wasted breath clings to the backs of melons. Furtive creatures with those eyes, viscous black, quick. The deer snort and stomp just inside the tree lawn. Through our edgy sleep, would they settle for tufts of bunch grass, forsythia leaves, small satisfactions if we just let them in? The prickly pear's careful inquiry. Each thorn a gesture to the petal's delicacy, while the yellow bloom tempers each point of its stem's menace. Wedlock. You say sedimentary, guiding me along the ledges, and point out alluvial layering where hard and soft rocks have folded over one another across time. I only notice shadows of various branches shifting across mossy boulders, whose faces change from amusement to chill derision. Here's a poem, an Ohio poem. And many other things, but Ohio, my current residence, is in this poem as well. When the blue-hatted muse speaks, like middle-aged lust, inconvenient, startling. The urge comes fierce, triggered by someone talking about downing some red stripe at a motel in Lodi, or by a blue pillbox hat in an old life photo, black and white, but I know it's blue, complete with netting, her painted lips mouthing something I can almost make out. Another time, by some falling down shed in a cornfield, County Road 27, on a day so hot the cobs roast as they grow. Enough to send me, nymph swift, shoeless, to my desk. Listen to what the blue-hatted woman is whispering. She knows the taste of Ohio's sweet corn, dripping butter, chased by an iced cold bottle of beer, backlit by flashing neon, vacancy. She insists, describe it. Black on white, my inspired, vivid kiss. The next poem is a tribute to my work as a speech pathologist. It's an ode to the anatomy of speech, to the vocal cords. And this is a poem that is written in 2 columns, so it's really can be read as 1 poem or as 2. So I'll read it as 2. To the vocal cords. Crazed cage, undo. Woo all the wild birds to our room. Word flurry, we know exactly how to mean. Know our voices, sensate strings will carry us, quiver us home. Pearly bivalve, winged sphincter, elegant bongo, wah-wah mouth, shake the startled formica space between us. Slick confession box, you clamor, then catch breath, suddenly renegade. Timid window, you let in a sigh, you sing, stammer, in time, seduce. Our sounds dip and glide across palate and tongue that suckles speech like nectar through a stem by lips that, oh, if he leaned across that clean space and kissed me, what sounds might keen, ardent as kids on a roller coaster, gasp, snatched at the crest, loosed into vertical oblivion. And the poem that reads down the column on the right-hand side of the page is woo, quiver us, mouth, breath, a sigh, glide, oh, what snatched oblivion. An aging poem. Roach. Glitterfish, tarnished star wreath, with your clasp gone, how will you fasten to my black cashmere, tight across the chest, unbuttoned to, yes, oh yes, he said, at the blue sky drive-in, clinched against the red leather of his Corvair convertible. How to sparkle now with your rhinestones half slipped, a galaxy of longing sputters in the night. Speaking of vocal cords, all right. This is another ekphrastic poem inspired by Andrew Wyeth, and it's also in the voice of Helga, his model, pardon me. And the epigraph is from Andrew Wyeth, a quote. When you're over with something, you're over with it. Unless it has that flash of the real thing, I don't want to drag it out. Andrew Wyeth. He came to me with his graphite points, his vellum, and we tramped one last time out to the woods, high above the schoolhouse, our boots breaking through crusted snow. This time, he let me wander, finding my own pose against the old apple tree where once I leaned away from this orchard, arching skyward, yet tethered. With younger limbs, I'd climb in spring and stretch out along branches stout as a man's leg. In another season, he painted me flush in a mound of fern moss where trunk and ground unite, brush stroked my hair, my skin, textured as the rocks, cloud-hued with his eyes. I was muscled as this trunk. Now he is absorbed by other shapes and colors, the moon and its blinding madness. His back bared to the wet air, my figure once his familiar, huddles collared against the chill. Eclipsed by this tower of coarse bark, rising to a tangle in the cast iron sky, he draws me in to its hollowed center. Imagine a town. Imagine a town like Slaughterville, Oklahoma, with every citizen, all 3,000 some gone, grand poof. Some ghost towns aren't inhabited even by ghosts. They don't stick around for their own haunting, trusting the waterless wind to bang shutters, no one left to shudder, or slide an arm around an imaginary back, practically feel the warmth, grasp an absent hand waltzing around a darkened parlor. At the Loneliness Convention. The windows in the back room of Johnny's Mission Inn have painted themselves shut. The door is a sleepless mattress sprung at head and hip points. Still, there is air enough for the moderator's brief announcements. One by one, we strained forward in our wooden folding chairs to hear his whispery listing of the day's activities. Unlimited wandering about the room, gazing through double-paned windows, beat the devil competitions. Lunch, of course, is on our own. He hands us each a name badge which reads anonymous, anonymous, anonymous. Escape artists at the movies. We savor the syncopated repartee from perfectly bowed lips. Connoisseurs of the blinding smile, we watch for foreshadowing in the vaulted darkness, say, aha, when the scissors she used to trim anniversary roses hover above his heart. They invite what frightens us most, easy betrayal, the slow simmer, truth. Afterward, cast back into our ordinary shoes, we shuffle between screen and sedan, united by the intrigue, the predictable ending. At home, I pour wine, undo a button, shuffle cards at the table, while he shifts in his chair, clears his throat, turns the page of a novel. This is more the upside of a relationship, on considering the purchase of a new mattress. And the poem is shaped like this. So if you have that shape in your mind while I read it. Back to back, we slide into that groove, transversing the length of our bed, long years of our carving, our daydreams that glide us to two contented bottoms, anchoring a V up to our pillowed heads, drawn by the inevitable pull back to center, shaping a little victory nightly. Childhood memory, partly real. Helen Gone. This also stems from my strict Catholic school upbringing. I took the roundabout route home from school to avoid cutting through the underpass, where you were sure to see the tapered toes, the dingy split leather beyond the trestle. I can't say we weren't warned, He'd be leaning against the concrete wall, whistling like a train, blowing smoke rings and jostling his crotch like a pouch of silver. The linen codpiece rubbed thin. The small of his back tapered into the clammy concrete, patient, watching for a ponytailed catechist, innocence creased into the pleats of her blue uniform. We held our breath and pedaled better than wind past the house of death, smashed in windows, wood rot porch, the decadent lean of abandonment over Torsh's Hill. We believed that to inhale its corruption was our peril. Short years later, our pleasure, rocking under the awkward weight of some Jimmy. I splintered my teenaged ass on its parched floorboards in plain daylight, calling it Tales. Post beams still hunch over that hill, stubborn as lust, will. Now, when I walk past with my dogs, their flagship tails high in the October brightness, a rustle of oak leaves falls back to earth. Poser. One would expect feathers puffing from sleeves or incandescent gestures, voices weak from disuse. But it's the shoes that give them away, the clopping gait. See how the feet bulge in their leather housing. Someone hobbling with just one shoe, like an old sneaker, is probably an angel, the mate left on some roadside or beach. Metal shavings may tangle in the crown of her hair. At dusk, when the light angles just so, they appear to sparkle there. Watch for them at cafes. An angel usually orders espresso, knocks it back in one swig. She may thumb through a magazine, distracted, waiting for someone to join her at the corner table, someone whose features are known by description alone. Check out her feet, tapping, tapping, so much to do. Two more poems. Hula Girls. The saleswoman assured me it was fashionable, revealing just a hint of thigh, white as twice whipped potatoes. But I chose the gaudiest of the bunch, yolk yellow with red piping, wanting to be visible while concealed this maiden summer of my leisure years. The skirt wafts above my waist, brazen manta flashing like the hula girl hibiscus bushes Mother and I had planted each spring. We'd tamped the soil with vermiculite, staining our fingers with the creaturely smells of dark appetite, tasting bits of mica in our sleep. All summer, I had pinched out the stem tips so the showy flowers with their ruby eyes could bloom continuously. The clerk also held out a black one-piece suit, material thick and shiny as sealskin, with a diagonal design meant to trick the eye. But in my new two-piece job, I bob into the current, toes curling in lake bottom ooze, my hair silvers the water, a flowering crown. And the last poem, to end on a happy note, is called Happiness. The mouth of the vase is not calling out for asters, for water. Its cobalt glass curves around the notion of flowers, a quenched stem and window light scattering the blueness. Thank you so much for listening. And thank you to Katerina Stoikova for these beautiful books from the Winged series. And again, this was original Ruse that I read for you. And thank you so much.